Okay, so the question is, how pregnant do I look? Yo, that's freaking huge. 엄마한테 올라올래요? 오케이, 이쪽으로 오세요. 하나, 둘, 셋, 와, 짜자. 양말? Okay. Some people have been asking, how difficult is it to raise Harper bilingually? And what do you do? How is it going? So I figured I'd tackle those questions today. So here we are. I can give you my thoughts and my experience, but obviously I'm not like a Korean teacher. I'm not a teacher, so I'm just kind of doing what feels doable. 안녕하세요. 제 이름은 상은이고 저는 미국에서 태어난 한국인이자 거의 2살이 된 딸의 엄마예요. 제가 임신을 했을 때 이렇게 결정을 했어요. 우리 아이들한테는 한국말을 가르치자. 제가 어렸을 때 그렇게 집에서 배웠거든요, 한국말을. 한글 학교도 다니고 이런저런 성경책도 읽고 이런 것을 다 했는데도 집에서 배우는 게 제일 편하더라고요. 저는 한국말이 조금 서툴어요. 영어가 조금 더 편하거든요. Actually, 더 많이 편해요. 근데 이렇게 동영상을 찍네요. 그래서 잘 부탁드려요. 제가 어렸을 때 한 초등학교 1학년인가? 아무튼 학교에서 집에 도착을 했는데 문 열고 들어가니까 우리 부모님이, 엄마 아빠가 갑자기 이러시는 거예요. 너 한국말 안 쓰면 우리랑 얘기를 못해. 그래서 저는 황당해가지고 조금 짜증도 나고 화도 나고 생각해보니까 이렇게 거의 30이 됐는데 거의 아직은 아니에요. 그 당시에는 엄청 짜증도 나고 힘들었지만 우리 부모님한테 너무 감사해요. 왜냐하면 이렇게 아름다운 언어를 배우는 게 힘들어요. 듣다 보면서 연습을 하면서 배우는 게 제일 자연스럽고 제일 힘들지 않고 이제 와서 한국말을 배우려고 하면 너무 힘들 것 같아요. 솔직히. 그래서 이렇게 힘들었지만 이렇게 한국말을 쓸 수 있는 그리고 배울 수 있는 기회를 주신 것을 너무 고마워요. 감사해요. Now to English. Ethan and I decided to teach Korean casually, at least for the beginning, to Harper because not only are there the developmental things like, teaching multiple languages at a younger age is good for the brain development, but ultimately it just comes down to it's a beautiful language and it's a part of who she is. And I think it's important for her to have that kind of background. We figured she's going to learn so much English just by being around people in the community, just because we live in the States. Right now, Harper's several words that she knows are mostly Korean, and then a few English. But yeah, like I said, she understands both, which is pretty awesome to see and listen to, I guess. To be honest, it's been pretty cool to see Ethan pick up on a lot of Korean, and his pronunciation has also just gotten so much better and better. I grew up in predominantly white areas, not very diverse. Because of that, I grew up pretty ashamed of my Koreanness, my Korean background, and was pretty quick to try to fit in with the people around me. And because of that, I know how hard it is, and I know how, this is such a lame word to use, but how lame it is to feel those things and to grow up feeling ashamed for something that you are, but it's a beautiful thing. And so I really wanted to show Harper that being Korean is part of her. It's something to be proud of and excited for. I lost a lot of my pronunciation and vocabulary, just the practice, because I don't have very many Korean friends. And so being surrounded by a community that um, doesn't involve needing to speak in Korean really made it easy for me to kind of forget. All that to say, I don't have a real method of what I'm doing right now, just because of my, I guess, knowledge and skill level in speaking Korean is fairly limited, and her exposure to other people speaking it is also fairly limited. Uh, I just try to be as intentional as I can at home. And so I'm usually with her more. And so it's pretty easy to teach her all these different phrases and words in Korean. Um, basic things that you would also teach in English, and she understands both. So, what do? I just speak to her in Korean. It's I feel like the easiest way to just like have her pick up things. Um, Another thing that I do is I got some Korean books that I really like. I got these more for the look, to be honest, but they are really fun stories. They're just like really pretty. And this one I especially like because it has like phrases in here that I wouldn't typically use in everyday talk. It's very poetic, I guess, at times. And I really like that because I'm learning too, and expanding my knowledge as well. Everyone does reading in for nighttime or bedtime or whatever, and I do the same. Ethan will read books in English or flip through Korean books too. It's just what you would normally do. And then lastly, I suppose, we listen to occasionally. I don't really play music that much when I'm at the house, when we're just like chilling at the house, but on occasion we do listen to Korean music for a good stint of time. Her favorite was Brugunor by Big Bang, which is a remix of an oldies song. Um, but yeah, so we just listen to Korean music, just getting a flow. I guess just hearing in the background even is good to hear pronunciation and the language itself and all that jazz. Not related to the bilingual aspect, but also part of the Korean culture is just food. Part of Korean culture is to speak love through food. And honestly, it's just like I know how to cook Korean food more than I do other types of food, so it just naturally makes sense. Yeah, I want her to be fully rounded in the culture, and so once she gets older and we start to introduce screen time, I'd love to show her Korean shows in tandem with um, American shows. So I do remember learning so much Korean and loving Korean dramas and game shows. So I'm really excited when she's older and can understand those things to be able to show those things to her, because you just pick up so much just by watching and just by listening, and it's a fun way to learn. And that's the biggest thing. I grew up with all sorts of things. My parents always showed me, like I said, game shows, dramas, but they also did um, Korean school for me, which I hated those, to be honest, because they weren't that fun, but it did help. And so I think having a blend of like schoolwork time, but also showing that it's just a language, so like you can have fun learning too, is going to be key as she gets older. And then as we introduce Eggie number two. So anyway, my Korean is pretty rusty. So I know there will be at a point where I hit my kind of like peak and won't be able to show her more elaborate Korean, I guess. But But until then, I still got some time and am looking forward to introducing new fun ways to keep her growth happening, and then also mine as well, and my practice as well too. And we do a little bit of ASL, some like made up hand motions, and then some actual ASL. So we taught her a lot of signs like all done when she was younger, just because she was really good with her hands and wanted to communicate but just couldn't verbalize things quite yet. Not only did it help her communicate with us sooner than she could talk, but also I think it'll help kind of bridge the gap between the English and the Korean as she enters preschool, because I think basic sign language is taught nowadays in preschool and kindergarten. The younger grade, are those grade schools? Anyway, grades, younger, whatever, lower education, elementary education. Oh gosh, I should know this.
Yikes!
But anyway, we're just trying our best. Don't really have a plan on how we do things or what we do. All I know is we're just trying to make it as natural as possible. And so far it's been working really great. If you were looking for like a step-by-step thing of what to do, I don't know. I don't have one. All I know is I'm just doing my best, and it seems like she's picking up on it, which is great. And if she's not, then, so be it. But I'm hoping that as she gets older and then Eggie comes into the world, it'll be natural for her to just know both languages, because, man, it is hard to learn a new language. It's really hard when you're just older. The syntax is different. Obviously, I mean, everything is different about it. The tongue movement, whatever, you get the point. But it's really hard, and so even though it takes a little more effort in terms of teaching Korean now, I think it'll be easier in the long run for her to pick up on it and to hopefully even learn other languages. Thanks for watching. If you were curious, there you have it. That's what we do. And if you weren't curious... Oh, and I forgot to say. So I picked out my outfit for this video, and I intentionally chose my Korean Doosan Bears baseball jersey, but I'm such a poser, and I'm not even gonna try to admit that I'm like a rooter or like a serious fan, because I have no idea who's even on the team, what the game stats are like. I don't even know like baseball period, so whatever, there you go. But Ethan was like, oh my gosh, that's perfect, because I have my Carhartt hoodie underneath, and he's like, oh my gosh, that's actually for your bilingual topic video, you're wearing bilingual clothes. And I was like, oh my gosh, crazy. So here we are. I'm out.